Greetings, friend! How are you doing today? I have a few questions for you today. My first questions for you. Do you have any visions or any goal, anything in your life that you would love that seems just to be out in the cloud? One of those visions that you say, well, I would really, really love that, but it seems to be way out there up in the cloud. Second question. How have you ever tried to touch the sky? Have you ever tried to touch the sky? And no, I'm not talking about skylight. I'm talking about the actual sky. And then the last question is, how do you turn something that is impossible into a reality? How do you turn something that's impossible into a reality? Well, Rumi, the Persian poet, says that there is one way that you can touch the sky. And no, we're not talking about skylight. We're talking about the sky up there. And according to Rumi, there is one way and only one way that you can touch the sky. And naturally, if you can touch the sky, you can achieve the goal, whatever it is that's perhaps way out, the seemingly up in, it's kind of like sometimes we say we're aiming for a shooting star or something like that. Naturally, if you're able to touch the sky, you probably will be able to, to achieve the goal that you have that is seemingly out in the cloud, right? And Rumi's answer for that is from your heart. Rumi say, only from the heart can you touch the sky. This is 2021's January. And for many of us, 2020 has been a rather interesting year, a very teaching year, a year of growth. And for some of us, it's been a magnificent, wonderful year. And we would love something that is even much more magnificent. On the other hand, for some of us, 2020, has been a year where there is so much challenge that we seems to be that we are quite in the dark. 2020 seems to be a year that that is quite a bit of challenge that we're quite in the dark. And at the same time, we would love something that is much better in 2021. But if there are so many things that has happened in your life, sometimes you say it seems to almost impossible for you to even perhaps have another great job, or be able to turn things around, or whatever it is. And then sometimes for you to even be able to go from where you are to where you were before everything happened in 2020 can be seemingly like something as big as a Mount Everest. And the concept of being able to do even better might feel like something that is way out there. Or perhaps your heart been broken, and your heart's been broken that you said, it's just seemingly impossible for me to be able to have love again or something. And yes, that is very true. But at the same time, we know that one thing that really can fuel us, that can not only fuel us, but also sustain us. One thing that can fuel us and sustain us, that can fuel you and sustain you for what it is, just as Rumi says, it's actually come from your heart. It's not something that you just think of. Thank you for joining me, friend. Sometimes we say, oh, let me think what's possible, and let me think what's realistic right now. And perhaps if we want to do something that our heart call, and we're like, well, that doesn't seem to be practical. But let me tell you this. Working with many people, and with myself, and knowing many people experience, it is at the end of the day what you love, which is come from your heart, is at the end of the day the one that will triumph. Why? Because when you love something, not only will fire you, but it will also sustain you when things not going the way that it would love to be. If you know a doctor, a medical doctor, or a veterinarian, and anybody been through medical training personally, you can ask them. And if you ask you ask a doctor, the majority of them, there is always exception, but when you ask somebody, particularly a doctor who is a board certified specialist in certain field, whatever the specialty is, particularly challenging specialty, you can ask them, and you can ask them, and you say, why is it that you become a doctor? How is it that you tolerate all the the training? And the training to become a doctor, it's typically to become a specialist, it's typically involved in the vicinity of 11 to 13 years of schooling. And unless you happen to have a lot of resource, by the end of that you have about $200,000 US dollar or more of debt. After you become a doctor, which is usually take 8 years in college, by the way, we're talking about college, not grade school. So college of 11 to 13 years or longer, if you depend on the specialty. And then you have about $200,000 in debt. And then after you receive your doctorate degree, at the end of 8 years of grueling training, and having to do to work practically 7 days a week, typically about 12 to 15 hours a day, and in some scenario you have to be on call, and you have to be able to stay up for about the vicinity of 2 days straight, and you have to not make sure that you don't make a mistakes because they fail you immediately. And then after you do all those, you got your doctorate degree. If you want to become a specialist, you do the next step, which you become a slave labor. Practically a slave labor, where you work just as hard, and then you got paid practically minimum salary, and you do that for 3 to 5, sometimes 7 years. And so if you ask somebody who is like that, they almost consistently, somebody who has become a doctor and become a specialist, they would say, what sustain you? What is it that sustain you? What makes you even do this? And what sustain you through all these things? And the answer typically is not money. Because you can make as much or more money than doctor doing something else. It's really not money. You can easily become a business person or something else, and many people I know many people who wanted to become a doctor, particularly a doctor who want to become a specialist, and they look at all these things, they're like, yeah, never mind, I can make money some other way. So the answer almost consistently is because I love it. Because I love it. Because I love it, because I love to be able to help, because I love doing this, because I love it. And so it's the love that sustains people, your love of what it is that you would really love, that come from your heart, is actually the one thing. It's not what you think you can, it's not what you think is realistic, it's not what some of your advisor, perhaps a friend or somebody, that say, hey, you got to do this. But when you truly love something, right, like Rumi say, only from the heart can you touch the sky. When you because a lot of time nowadays, this is January, and a lot of time, many time people says, oh, I have the New Year's resolution, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do that, all this long list of New Year's resolution. And many times, by the second week of January, the majority of us has kind of slip away a little bit from that New Year's resolutions. By the end of January, even more people slip away. Have you ever had a New Year's resolutions that you did not keep up with? So why? Because a lot of time we have New Year's resolutions because it's something that somebody say, it's good, because it's whatever the media says, because it's whatever your friends say, or perhaps you come from guilt. You know what, I'm feeling bad that I'm not doing this. Oh, you know what, I'm feeling bad that I should have do this. And when you should have yourself, when you're feeling bad of this and that, then yes, it will give you, which is what New Year resolutions typically is. It's like if you ever open a soda can, a Diet Coke or a Coke can or something, you know, all this fizz, they push you, they're going fizz like that. And then you got the fizz, you got the push, you make the move, you do really, really good. I'm going to exercise since the gym, at least in the United States, the majority of the place, the gym's not open yet. Well, I'm going to, exercise at home because I'm feeling guilty now. Well, guilt is not at the vibrations of ease. Guilt means you are doing a lot of push. I'm guilty. I'm guilty. We're talking about these vibrational charts that I often refer to. Guilt is down here, and then even courage is here, and desire is here, while life flow in the vibrations of love. But then love come from heart. And that's why if you have a project, whether it's you have a New Year's resolutions, or you have a visions for this year after everything that happened last year, I invite you to check in with yourself and say, do I want to do this because I think this is a good idea, or do I want to do this even as impractical or unrealistic this sound? It's truly come from my heart because I truly, truly love it with everything that I have. And if the answer is yes, it is really come from your heart, right? Rumi says, what comes from your heart can touch the sky, and it will not only it will give you the push to get started, but it will sustain you, just like people who go through medical training. It will sustain you for whether if it is something you truly, truly, truly love, whether it is something that it will take you immediate success, or in the case of some doctors training, 11, 13, 15 years of college training. It will sustain you. So what is it that your heart really, really calls you? We all want to have success in our life. And one thing that I have seen over and over again, the number one requirement to be able to succeed, to beyond anything that you've ever known, to be able to succeed, to reach something that's seemingly way out in the sky, is truly, truly love it. Coming from something you really, really, really love, not something you think it's good to do. And when you are able to do that, even when there is obstacle, even when there is challenge, you will be able, even if you have to take a step back, even if you have to take a break. I see many, many, many times. I have a few friends actually when I was going to school that they said, oh, well, I tried to do this and then life happens and then I have to do something else and I'm going back to this. Some 10 years later, 15 years later, 20 years later. And that's one thing that drives them. It wasn't, oh, this is going to make more money. And one of them was making, one of my friend who came returned to school, she was even back then generating a great income. She was one like the top real estate agent in the day, and she dropped everything, going back to school for practically drop all her, using all her saving, her income, and then going on the so-called slave labor. And what drive that? Love. Love not only will push you, love will fire you. So if you have something in your life right now that you said, I really want for things to turn around to be better, I invite you to join me to look in your heart, not what on the papers, not what everybody says, not what practical and what have you, but look in your heart. What's your heart really, really call you? Because that, even in the darkest night, even in the longest day, it will sustain you way more than any practical things out there. I invite you to share in the comment below what it is that something that your heart really call for this year, and perhaps it's something that a love that you revive from the past, because sometimes we revisit our old love, and that's just wonderful. Usually when you do that, you actually have even more fire with that, and more passion, because you know that this is really for you, and that's just wonderful. Share in the comment below what is it that you really would love. Share in the comment below if you have done something like this and you really see that it's really truly bring you life, and feel welcome to share this video that anyone you'd love to. Thank you, Rolanda, for your feedback. Please share your feedback in the comment below, and I love you very much, and I see that you are succeeding and thriving with a lot more ease and a lot more joy and a lot more fun when you are tapping into your love, because we know that life and universe move at the vibrations of love, and I see that you are thriving wonderfully, and I love you very much. This is Bridget with From Grieving to Joyful Living, and I look forward to see you again very soon.